Okay, hello everyone. This is Azren here with Blaise and Kolton, and we're doing another Blackfoot podcast. Now, we were just before we started recording, we were talking about the reactions people have, Blackfoot people would have if you were non-Blackfoot and then you were speaking Blackfoot. And so both Kolton and Blaise are sharing some pretty funny stories. Maybe we can actually start with those stories actually, because they are pretty funny. Kolton, do you want to share the one with the man in the field?
Oh yeah. So my friends told me this story of when they were Itainiwak kaya they were picking berries and there's this white guy napi Juanito to he come in kinix nitat cakes my friends tanis si they told him ikasanis si they kind of were joking to him and they said tani tapi okay napi they just hello, how are you, Trent? Because they knew that he wouldn't speak Blackfeet, but Ninapi Kwanitanya, that white guy just said, okay, Kshukapi, Kitakishpoao. That white guy said, oh, I'm really good. What are you guys doing? Kitakishpoao. And they're just taken aback. They didn't expect him to um, speak Blackfeet. And then there's this other story I was told about an anthropologist, a linguist, way back then, maybe about the 50s, 20s, a long time ago. And he spoke Blackfoot. He was this white guy. And then he went to the Ukan one day, the Sundance. And he was walking around. Kimoaki, this woman, it didn't steal. She told him, or no, she didn't say. She just kind of like exclaimed to her friends and family, "Ay, napi kwan." There's a napi. There's a white guy walking around, and he just told her, "Matkweke, nikakesapi kanistakishpuao." So kind of, don't mind me. I'm just seeing how you guys are doing everything. And she's just, "Aya, napi kwan," or no, just "Aya." She couldn't believe that he just spoke Blackfoot back to her, so she just ran off. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty funny. Because one thing I've noticed is I've learned other languages where I don't look like I should speak the language. Like Mandarin, I'm in Taipei right now, so Mandarin's the most, um, probably the best example I would say because here I am, and I definitely don't look, uh, I don't look Chinese or Taiwanese or, Malaysian or anything like that. I don't look it. And so it's quite surprising for people when I speak Mandarin. But as I've progressed through Mandarin, I find that there's this sweet spot where you're at the beginning levels, they know you're a beginner and they're very encouraging because you're struggling over even very basic phrases. Then there's this intermediate phase where you're still kind of struggling, but you're able to get by. And then that's where you get a lot of questions like, oh, you speak, Mandarin, or like, oh, how did you learn? And oh wow, you speak Mandarin. Oh wow, and the foreigner speaks Mandarin. Wow, and you get these wow reactions. And then there's another point where, like nowadays, when I start to speak, because I'm a lot better than I used to be, and so when I speak to people, I come across quite fluent right off the bat, and so there's no time for surprise almost, and I also have a quite good pronunciation, and so there's no time for surprise almost. They just react as if I was like a normal native speaker, and then
Mm.
later they'll be like, oh, so are you like are you like do you like work here? Do you like live
Mhm.
here? Or are you mixed? They have like a term which is like mixed blood, which means like maybe your dad is Taiwanese, but your mom is American or Indian or whatever. Or they'll say like, oh, are you from Singapore? Right. So then they try, then later they'll ask questions trying to figure out like, why is it that this guy doesn't look like us, speaks like us? Like maybe works here. Then they try to piece it together. But the initial reactions are just like, oh, they just answer you as if you were, them. And I get that in Spanish too, where now in Spanish, when I speak, they just assume I'm a native speaker, not from where they're from. That's just their assumption. Oh, he's a native speaker, but not from where I'm from. And then they might ask, oh, so where are you from? And then when I say Canada, that's where they get shocked. Like, Canada? What do you mean, Canada? What, but then why do you speak Spanish like that? Then they get shocked. But initially, because they're expecting like some Latin American country. Yeah. So, well, yeah, today Colton and Blaise, I think you guys have something prepared for me. You want to teach me some Blackfoot?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll pass it off to the two of you. I don't know what to expect, so I'm excited.
So you know how like hola, ¿qué pasó? Or konnichiwa, genki desu ka? So like for Blackfoot, okki sanitapi. So which means hello, how are you? So okki
Okay,
sanitapi.
sanitapi.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, sorry, that means what? Like, hi,
Hello.
¿Cómo va?
hello,
Like
how
it's
are
like,
you?
hola, ¿cómo va? Or ¿cómo te va?
Okay, it's like, hi, how are you? Okay.
Good. How's it
And
going?
How's it going?
then
Mm-hmm.
you say iksokapi.
Iksukapi.
Iksukapi. Iksukapi.
Iksukapi.
And you'll say I'm okay, matquiki, but
Matquiki.
in Colton's case, how do you
It's
guys say like it's all right?
Matokapi, which is just our version of Matquiki.
Mhm.
Matokapi. But most of the time I'll say Matquiki because that's just kind of the standardized version now is Matquiki. But the big anyway is Matokapi.
Say matukapi or
Matquiki.
matqueki. Oh.
Most people are gonna understand Matquiki. Yeah, Matquiki. And then if you're not doing well, then of course you could say Matsukapi. Not good. People don't really ever say Makapi, which is bad.
Mm.
They always just say Matsukapi. It's not good. But most of the time people just say Iksukapi. But
Mm-hmm.
now a lot of more advanced speakers will say Stonetske Sukapi. Do you ever hear that?
Mhm.
Blaise Stonetske Sukapi, which is like really good.
Hmm.
Here in Ghana, we say stunatsi iksokapi, but
Stonetske Sukapi means um deadly, extremely good.
Deadly, extremely good.
Yeah.
stunatsi.
Because Stonat means deadly or dangerous even.
Uh-huh.
Ske is just extreme. So
Mm-hmm.
Stonetske Sukapi is extremely yeah, extremely dangerously good.
Mm.
And then
But I wonder if one of you or if one of you could just make like a simple Word document that just has all like everything we cover, but like maybe we can, like for now we'll just type it in the chat. And
Mhm.
then if one or both of you can just make like a simple Word document with them, and then I'll when I post the podcast, I'll just put a link or something or a download link or something like that. So
Mm.
people want it.
and then sometimes Idaksanil. They're telling when they joke around when you ask Sanitapi, some people say Iksikapi and Sikapi instead of Sukapi because they sound really similar. But the difference is Sukapi just means it is good. And when you say Sikapi, it's like it's dirty.
It's
Instead of
dirty,
saying you're good, you're doing dirty.
so they're just joke. Just
Uh,
Sikapi.
that's just joking around.
Yeah. Look up someone's Sanitapi, Iksikapi. It's really dirty. Iksikapi.
and you can say if you want to joke around, naha,
Yeah, nah.
which is like it's kind of like what?
People say ha'ai. Ha'ai is a really actually no, it's not said too often anymore, but it's still a phrase. Ha'ai. But most of the time people say ta or tss. Up north, that's what they'll say tss or ta. But down here, we say oaks. But they both come from the same word, like KSS. It's kind of like a sign of disgust, but used in a joking way. Up there, it evolved into which became tsa. So they added a vowel to kind of make it more easily pronounced. Then it came after that tsa. Down here, the opposite happened. We put an O in the beginning before the vowel to put emphasis in the beginning instead of at the end. So we say oaks, but up north they say ta. It means basically the same thing, just kind of has a different etymological, um, how could you say, evolution.
Oh, sorry, what does it mean?
It's just kind of like an expression, like how in English we say geez, and it doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of like that. It's just something. It's just kind of a humorous phrase.
Oh, okay.
Oaks.
Almost
Typically,
like
when something happens that's funny, or yeah, and funny occurrences, you could
it's
say like,
almost
Like
like
oh
why? Go
it's
ahead,
kind of
Blaise.
like the equivalent of like G Willikers versus like
yeah.
Gee
Oh,
Willikers. I haven't heard that.
well, no, it's not like
no, but in a joking matter. Like,
more extreme. Like if somebody like Oaks is kind of like you're saying that's what you get, almost like if somebody's walking by and they're acting this way, acting that way, and then they just like fall, like that's when you would say Oaks. But up north, they don't really use it like that. I've never heard that like ta, like if that happens. I hear ta as in like kind of like saying gross. Like if somebody tells you just like an ugly joke, you'd say ta. So it's kind of
when someone falls down or
yeah.
acts stunatsi, if you will.
Uh,
Like sometimes, like say for instance, if I were to kind of like look cool or something like that, and I fall down, most like they're my generation, we tend to say like damats, which is
oh
kind
yeah,
of like, or
damas.
damatska, which is kind of like
Poor little thing.
or little things.
Pobrecito.
Hmm.
Pobrecito, pobrecito. Anista panisin. But yeah, damaska is used a lot. Like, oh, you poor thing, damaska. I have a story about that. There's this woman, she's about middle age. She was at the casino, and she's telling these two Canadian women that come in. The two Canadian women are speakers, and then that one woman from Scotty Picani didn't speak. And she's telling them a story, and she kept telling them all the pitiful things that was happening to her. Oh, I lost my wallet. Oh, I this happened, just bad things. They kept saying Damaska, Damaska, poor thing. Oh, like poor thing, Damaska. Then at the end of her story, she just told those Canadians, gee, I'm gonna quit telling you about my troubles. You guys just keep calling me a dumbass because I'd say dumbass.
Oh man.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, and then so yeah, that's a popular expression. But
You
it's
guys, do you guys have like anything that's like the Canadian like A?
yeah,
Oh,
they really
okay.
say hey, hey.
uh,
Oh, you gotta go talk to him, hey. Yeah.
and down in Amskapigani, I always hear them say like, "Ain't it?"
Or we say hey instead of a, but it doesn't come from Blackfoot. It's like an English expression that we stole and then just like appropriated. Like a really popular expression when people want to, because the Mskapi Pikani like reservation dialect sounds different than all of the other dialects because it's not based in native speakers of Blackfoot. It's based in like native English speakers, so like the great grandchildren of the speakers. And so it's not because when somebody speaks Blackfoot as a first language, they have a different accent, and then their great grandkids, however, are going to have a completely different accent because they spoke up English. But the popular way to make fun of our like accent is when they say, "Oh, cousin, hey, you got $5, hey." So that's kind of like the A that we have is just hey. Yeah, everybody uses that one phrase to make fun of that hey sound that we use. Oh, cousin, hey.
What's that?
So yeah, we do have hey a, but we kind of turned it into hey.
But it sounds like you
No,
use it differently than we do in like in Canada with our English A.
Yeah,
Sounds like a different meaning.
yeah, it
now
is.
that you mention that too, like we say chi,
See, huh?
chi, but
How about, yeah,
oh, that like
I
there's a
say
weird
yeah a lot.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but that's more feminine. But now,
yeah.
Blackfoot men are kind of using that.
Oh yeah,
That's
but the mascot, from how I know it, is kind of a feminine word. Another feminine kind of term that is used is "bakutni." Have you ever heard that?
yeah.
"Bakutni." I
I
remember when I first I remember watching my kind of grandma, not my biological grandma. Like I just found this old lady, decided to call her grandma. I was at her house and she was cooking and she forgot about her food. That was the first time I heard that phrase. She was burning her eggs and she's like, "Yeah, bakutni," and I just thought it was like just the strangest word ever, bakutni.
oh man, I got in trouble for saying that when I
Yeah,
was.
so yeah, it's only really a woman's phrase, bakutni.
But the funny thing with today's Blackfoot women too, they appropriate like or
Oh yeah, they use men's
but now the
expression.
man now it's like yeah, but Gutney.
Ah yeah, bakutni. I
I don't
like
know
my
what.
favorite kind of phrase that I use whenever I'm done talking. Every time I'm get done being serious, I like to end it on a joke. So I'll say, "Kena ni napi quakes." When do you know? Have you ever heard of that phrase? Or no, "Kena ni napi." That's what Napi's saying. That's what Napi's been saying, and so I'll use that whenever I get done talking about something serious. Like I was describing prayer and how it's different in Blackfoot and the ways that we pray. Then at the end of my probably 20-minute um, spiel or whatever, I just said, "Get now any Napi." Anyway, that's what Napi's saying.
Ray,
Ah,
since you speak Japanese, you might be able to you'll understand this probably more than I would, I think, because I don't really speak Japanese, but I had a linguistics professor back in 2000, I want to say 2012, maybe 2013, maybe 2011, actually. It was a long time ago. And he used to live in Japan. And when he went to Japan, he didn't speak any Japanese at all. And he lived with this Japanese woman. And I think her kids were there too, but he spent mostly he learned Japanese through this one lady. And he'd kind of listen to her and he'd try and talk and they would just communicate. And so he got without any formal classes, he picked up at least some basic conversational Japanese at a minimum.
mhm.
Then he came back to Canada and he met some Japanese people and he's telling them that he lived in Japan for a while and he picked up some Japanese. They said, "Oh, really?" And they start speaking. And then they're kind of chuckling a little bit. And he said, "Oh, what's so funny?" He's like, "Oh, you talk like a woman."
Oh
Because he
yeah,
picked it
like
up from, yeah.
so like with Japanese kind of like speaking patterns, like say like kind of like the formal or kind of like the neutral stance, like doko doko ni ikimasu ka versus doko ne ikimasu ka. Sometimes like Japanese women they kind of pronounce that like s or what else? Or even like
Some of your
doko ni
pronouns, like some of the pronouns too, right? Like you have like ore, which is like quite like masculine, like very masculine, and then you have like watashi, which is more like,
kind of like neutral and feminine.
yeah, yeah.
Isn't like Oko like
Boku.
masculine too? Oh,
Boku is kind of like used as for like masculine, but from what I was trying to do my best in Japanese, like when I try to use that, I got kind of taught to say I kind of sound a little bratty when I use that.
hmm.
But I don't know, maybe I mispronounced some of my context or sentences wrong. But ore is kind of like used as like a masculine, but sometimes people say it's rough or you're kind of too masculine. But say like I was kind of thinking about like how like with Blackfoot too, like it's funny like
Yeah, we definitely have that kind of gendered speech, but not as much as the tribes around us too. Like in Gros Ventre and Assiniboine, you like they pronounce their words differently depending on if they're a man and a woman. And there's a bunch of different stories about men that learn the language from their grandma, but essentially the woman teaches them all the woman pronunciations, and then everybody says, "Oh, you just talk like a woman." Like
mm,
an example in Gros Ventre, like I believe, or it could be a Assiniboine. my brain kind of confuses the two because their reservations are like the same area, and so there's I kind of forget. But like nahe is how they would say oki for a woman, but wahe is what the man would say. But and that's common in a lot of the languages around Montana. But Blackfeet, we don't have anything as kind of complex as that. We do have small things, like bahgutni or tamaska or ta versus ya or yo or hi. But really, outside of the way that you express yourself, the language is kind of similar for everybody.
Even for the word for like hanya, for instance, which
Yeah,
means it's like, is that so or that's correct? But like masculine for Blackfoot masculine, we kind of I use like oh hanya, hanya versus
hanya.
kind of hanya, kind of elongated it.
Mm.
But that's
Yeah,
something I'm not sure from your observations, Colton, on that one.
I don't know. I haven't really paid attention enough. I think I've
Mm,
heard men and women say the same hun or hanya.
mm,
I'd say I've only really seen men go like hun. They kind of like say it really loudly and just kind of to shut off everything. They just said hun.
mm.
I haven't really seen any women go hun just like really loudly. So that kind of loud like hun is just like a thing I've only seen men do. But that's other than that, I'd say most women say anya or hanya the same as a man would say hanya. But I've only really seen some men go hun.
Even up here, like men up here, we say like depending on like their Blackfoot level, it's like hun from gyan.
Oh yeah, again.
Gyan.
Let's say really fast.
Mm.
Again.
It's kind of like height or or us in Japanese.
Mm.
Like
Gyan. It's kind of like well the literal definition of gyan and han is well gyan is and there it is. And then han is just there it is. Or hanya is like, oh there it is. But gyan is just well there it is.
Mhm.
Um if you've ever watched the movie Amadeus, the like emperor whoever, he's always saying like and there it is or there it or like there you go there it is, and that's kind of like how we talk in Blackfoot. Oh there it is again.
Like, there it is.
Yeah, so that's also where we get genawa ni naapi, and that's what Naapi's saying.
Man, so like for kind of like learning these social cue sets for Blackfoot when you kind of like come to Blackfoot like country, if you will. Well, since you're active in Blackfoot country, Azren, like these are things that kind of like you kind of pick on cues, social cues when
Mhm.
someone's Blackfoot. But for like the premises of like this podcast, if you will, is kind of like going to be teaching you like simple nouns and simple verbs so that we
Mm.
can get like a better context of like okay, what's the difference between eating versus drinking or sleeping versus awake, if you will. So I think that since the viewers of the podcast that are learning Blackfoot, I think it would be really good to actually get their feet kind of wet in like learning self-teaching themselves Blackfoot in this
Mm.
podcast. Taking the stick since nah be.
Ha naapi ha ay han. Yeah, there it is.
Mm,
There
honey.
you go. There you go, Tiki.
So there are three ways you could say my name is. If you think back on like a previous podcast, like there's three different ways, or four,
Ah,
or wait, no, three.
couple
Yeah, three
different
different ways
ways.
to say my name is. So like for Gannett dialect, or up in Canada, Alberta, Southern Alberta dialect of Blackfoot, like Itaniko, Nitsinskasen. So in the chat, uh, my name is in Blackfoot. Oh, Itaniko versus Nitsins. Nitsins. Wisconsin. 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 The name I was given.
And then
And I think the stoical, but
there's a couple different ways to say nistuakok. You could say nistuakok, nistu annikok, which has the same un. It's like there I am. And then nistu amok, but that's not really used that often. Nistu amok, here I am. Most of the time they'll say nistuakok or nistu annikok. But yeah, nistuakok is the most common. Sometimes even nistuok. But yeah, again.
So
with Nidaniku, I have a interesting about that. Azren, I believe in Spanish. I'm not advanced enough to say, but I believe you can use decir. It's also kind of like as a substitute to jamar.
Do you
Just
say
like
what?
say as to use the
Decir?
word say like as call. Like I've kind of heard that sometimes, like instead of saying he called me crazy, they'll say like they told me crazy, or like they call me this, they'll say they tell me. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm, you might have to change you'd probably have to change the what do you call it? Like the word, or not the word order, but like
Mm.
I don't think you can just say he said me crazy. I don't think you can
Hmm.
say that. But maybe in some countries you can. There's like a lot of places that there's like a lot of
Yeah.
Spanish speaking countries, but not that anywhere I've been or people I've spoken to, no.
Hmm. Could have swore I said it, but the reason that I said it is because it's if there is some country that uses that, it's the same in Blackfeet. So for Nitaniku, what it actually means is I am told.
Mm-hmm.
Nitaniku, I am told. And shoot, I thought
I
it'd be
am
the
told. I see. I see. I see. Okay.
like I wouldn't Nitaniku Kolton, I am told Kolton.
Mm-hmm.
Because ani comes from awani to say, and then that ikku at the end means something is done to me by just no one in particular. Like they call me, no, I am called. It's not really saying who's doing the calling, it's you're called. It's the same thing in Blackfeet. I am called. Or no, they tell me essentially. I am told is what nidaniku actually means.
Yeah.
I am told.
it reminds
And
me of that song. Is like they call me Stacy.
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah, I'm told. But yeah, that's what nidaniku actually means. I thought it was strange, but yeah, once I started thinking about it, it was like, so I tried to figure out what Hidaniku actually means. And it stumped me for a really long time until I finally just realized, broke it apart. And, oh, it means I am told. How strange. But yeah,
And what about like where do Blackfoot names come from?
depends on who gives it to you.
Well, like from like a cultural standpoint, like depending on like your, I guess you could say your successes or coups back then, like they would generate names of like your successes or your
Mm.
achievements.
Or you
And,
could be named by somebody else's achievements.
mhm.
You could
And
either
like
take that achievement as your name or you could give it as a name. My
mhm.
name was given to me from somebody else's achievement, from my namer's achievement. But other people, they just have whatever I guess calls out to them. Like I know,
Mm-hmm.
see, me, um, calling crane came because that morning they all saw these cranes flying and calling, and then they just thought it'd be a good name. And
Mhm.
then some, I'm not really sure where they come from. I think they just kind of sound cool, or not sound cool, but
So
they're
then
just.
are you named like later and you're given your Blackfoot name later? You're not at
I
birth?
think a lot of people are given back then. They're given names at birth. Sometimes they keep it, but I think most of the time they change it. Like the last chief, the late Nam Akapa Earl Old Person, he had two different names. Supu from his birth, or from his youth as Coldwind. And then as he got older, they called him Akgapagapi, charging home.
Okay.
So yeah, some people change it, but nowadays I think most people get to a little later in life. Though I know some people who have had names since their birth.
Mhm.
Right.
Even originally too, like there's like when you receive different names, you kind of get like from a kid's name to a, like an adult name, then to like a great leader name. So
Mhm.
they're kind of like structural names of like hierarchy in a way of like building the self, if you will. So like for instance, like how I kind of got my Blackfoot name was like Stomach Sina, which is kind of like bull chief, if you will, based on like the successes of like kind of being engaged in sports or engaged in like school.
Yeah.
Or, like these are things that kind of build up that name to be awarded to you the self. And then my next name, it's kind of funny story actually. The person when someone dies or someone has passed on, like that name kind of passes on to you. And I had the name of like Guy Stottle, which is like ghost bear, but due to the like one of community members on the reserve, Guy Stottle was not didn't pass on, so I couldn't take that name. And so then due to like learning on more like going on like physical activities or like cross country, if you will, I was bestowed the name Inomska, which is like Buffalo Runner. And so like these are kind of like names of hierarchies in Blackfoot culture or age graded age names in Blackfoot culture, if you will. If that makes sense. But so the more you kind of like build up the names, better you kind of like achieve those kind of like awards of your life, kind of symbolizes your name. But these are just kind of like different cultural subsets based on like
And what if you're how do I put this politely? What if you're a bit of a lump on the log, bit of a bum? Like what happens? How does your name change as you get older? Like what
There's
if literally like a 49-year-old man, you're a bit of a
a lot
I
of
don't know.
people that have like basic names. Like there's names
Okay.
that are so common that I'd compare them to John. Like Bita
Yeah.
Kumapi, Eagle Boy. I know a bunch of people like that. A lot of women I know, Bonogaki, Elk Woman. There's like a lot of names that are really common, like really, really common. Like I'll hear somebody's Indian name and then I think because Indian names, when we use our Blackfeet names, we never really use our last names because typically most people their name is unique to them. It's not like with names today. There's a bunch of people named John, but it got to the point that whenever I hear an Indian name, sometimes I have to think for a second on who it is because I know like four other people with the same
Mm.
like
that's so true.
Itana, Eagle Chief. There's like so many names that are kind of gotten common to the point that they're like John or Tyler, Daniel, just names that like 10 people with those
And then
ones.
are those people, are they born with that name, or are they people that was the name they were assigned at some point and that's just what they're called?
Just the name that they got at some point.
Okay, okay.
It's like Suaki or like what's that one? I keep forgetting this Blackfoot name, like Flower Girl or Flower Woman. That's kind of like it's like
Suck.
Kimberly versus a Stacy.
Yeah.
Kind of like
I
how a
see.
John versus
Matsowaki is another really common, like really common. Matsowaki, pretty woman. Oh, I know
Mhm.
so many people with that name, Matsowaki. But yeah, there's a lot of
So not everyone's name changes at some point in life.
uh,
Like some people kind of stick with
some
what they
people
have.
keep the same name. Some people have really like I mean, some names are Blackfeet names are really cool, and then some other people are just like,
Just keep it. It's cool.
yeah, yeah, just like mm,
like the
my
coolest name I ever
oh,
encountered.
like one of my grandparents' name was Big Nose. Like Sissy, that was just his name, and I almost got that as my last name before Revis came into like the picture. My family was almost the Big Noses instead of the Revises, so that unfortunate. But yeah, names, they can come from somewhere, you know, cool and inspiring, like from a coup story or from an accomplishment or from
Hmm.
the medicine of some animal. Um, but they can also just be plain names, like big nose, literally like just an attribute. It kind of just depends on who's naming you. You know, if they're really accomplished, then they'll probably give you an accomplished name. Um, depicting some kind of honor. But if
Mhm.
they don't really have anything, then they'll probably just see your big nose and start calling you that.
Like the most Chad name in Blackfoot culture or Blackfoot history is like Chistigomina, which is like
It's
lightning
cool.
chief.
Which is
Thunder
what,
Chief.
sorry?
Chistigomina is like the lightning chief.
Oh,
Like,
Uh, Thunder Chief.
mhm.
Yeah.
huh.
But yeah, there's some good names. Some are just average and some are really just
Right.
plain.
I asked because like the reason I asked is because like so Mandarin, that's the most I'm learning that for nine years now, and people have Chinese names. You get a Chinese name and your English name. They always have a Chinese name. It's not like like Spanish. You just sort of keep your name. Yeah, you might change it a little bit if you've got a Spanish equivalent of your name, but like you just sort of keep your name basically. Maybe change the pronunciation. But
Mhm.
Mandarin also has a culture of having Chinese names, and so when you're a foreigner learning Mandarin, you need to have a Chinese name, and it's when you're learning, they don't foreigners don't know how to pick a Chinese name. So
Mhm.
usually your teacher will just or a friend or someone will just give you one, like, okay, that's your name, and you're like, okay, and you just go with it. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering because my name in Mandarin's changed 4 times.
Really?
Yeah, I've had 4 different names, but so the first name, the reason I changed, my teacher gave it to me, and the reason I changed it was because every time I said it, people didn't know what I was saying. So I don't know if I was mispronouncing it or it was a weird name, but I was like, hey, this is not working. My next name was I asked my teacher, I told my teacher, hey, I need a new name because this is like, I can't, every time I say it, people look at me like, what? So she gave me a name, which I had for like a number of years. And I'm so embarrassed that I had the name because it's a stupid name. I don't know why she gave me this name. Well, it's not a stupid name, but it's not, it's a bit strange. It's Lantian.
Mhm.
Lantian means blue sky, which might sound nice. Oh, blue sky. Okay. No, but here's the thing. You don't give people the name of an object in Mandarin. So like we said, hey, what's your name? I'm Table. Excuse me? Like what? What'd you say? Yeah, my name's Table. I'm Brown Table. What? What do you mean you're Brown Table? Like it is weird. So someone eventually told me, hey, like just so you know, you have a really odd name. And I was like, yeah? Yeah, like where did you get it from? So they helped me pick a name that used to be Ah Si Yun. It sounds kind of like Azren.
Mhm.
And I stuck and so it's not when foreigners get their Chinese name, the practice is something like this. You either will get a name that definitely is foreign, but it sounds kind of like your English name. So when people hear the name, they'll say, okay, that's definitely a foreign name. They definitely know that, right? Oh, it's a foreign name. Um, and then they know it sounds like the English, like Mike or whatever. They know it sounds like something, or they get a completely Chinese name. So like, well, let's just go the Azren. Let's find something sounds similar. Just Ah Si Yun for a while, and then it became Azren. A because it sounds closer to my actual name, and B because that last character Yun in Asi Yun. Often a lot of girls' names have that character, so they're like, oh, we should find something that's more like a man would have. So Ren. So I've had Asi Ren for a long time, which works. I don't get weird looks anymore. It's just sort of a name. The only thing about my name now that's a bit odd in Chinese is that the way that Chinese names work is the first character of a Chinese name is your last name, and the
Mhm.
next 2 characters are your first name. So my first name is technically Si Ren. However, what's slightly awkward is that Ah is not a last name. It is definitely not. It is a weird, like if your last name is Ah, it's like, it just, because Ah means like, like, oh, it's like, what's your last name? Oh, what? Oh, like, what do you mean? What's your, it's just odd. So it's sometimes a lot people ask me, so they'll be like, oh, so what's your first name? What's your last name? It doesn't happen often. And I'll just be like, yeah, my first name's Si Ren. And they'll say, oh, okay. And I'll say, but please call me Ah Si Ren. Just like, okay. But anyway, there's like a whole, like picking a Chinese name is, there's a whole process behind, and people do change their names often because they don't like their first name anymore because they realize what it meant when they get more advanced. And so that's why I was wondering where Blackfoot names come from.
Do you have like 4 Chinese names?
Why it's Azren is what I stick with now. And it's just I might change it again later, but like I might pick another one, like a Chinese I feel like when I'm like super duper fluent in Chinese, like and I feel confident having like a very Chinese name where it's like they wouldn't know you're a foreigner just by looking at it. Then I'll find one. But for the time being, Azren is just fine. Yeah.
Could call you Akapadams Tinamanchkasim. Many Chinese names.
The problem with that is I'll be able to pronounce that.
Akapadams Tinamanchkasim.
Yeah.
I know I had to type it out to think of how to. Whenever I have to talk about something Chinese, like Chinese food, I have to think about it for a long time because it's such a cluster. Apadams Cinema.
Oh, because the word for Chinese and in Blackfoot is a mouthful.
Yeah, Apadams Cinema.
Cool.
Akapadams Cinemanchkasim. Me. Yeah, Akapadams. Yeah. See, that's right. Akapadams Cinemanchkasim. Me. Has many Chinese names. That'll be your Blackfeet name.
I feel like that's a conversation starter. Like, why? What do you mean? What are you for? What?
Yeah, there'd be a good conversation. To be like, huh? That'd be such a strange name. Many Chinese names. Yeah, my name's many Chinese names.
Like,
No, I have a Blackfoot name.
Yeah. I guess it's like wait, then yeah, 4 names. Yeah, it's 4. Yeah, that's 4. Oh my god, I just saw it in the chat. That's long.
Oh, here, I'll write it.
Got it.
This is what I
try to hear.
Manchkasim.
Meant.
Well,
So there's no lot of them.
Let's wrap. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's that?
So there's no wait. Okay, maybe I misheard. I thought you had a glottal.
Akapadamstinamanchkasim.
Okay, it's got some. It
Yeah,
could be
Ak means many. Apadamstinima is
long braid.
tiny. Yeah, no braid in the back, and then
Oh.
Kasim. Yeah, the names for ethnicities are based on something like very long time ago. Like German, Ixistimoki Tepi is pointed hat person. It refers to like the points they had on their helmets back in like the 20s. Or even like the 1800s. I forget what they're called, but yeah, you know those helmets.
Yeah, the Northwest Police, Mounted Police had those hats too.
Oh yeah, Kistimoki. And so Apadamstinima refers to the dynasty that they were in when they were here, working on the railroads. They all had to have like a braid in the back. And so we named them Apadamstinima, braids in the back. Because we typically had 2 braids in the front.
Right.
And so that's another joke. Whenever you see somebody with 1 braid, you call them Apadamstinima. Or Apadamstinima.
Well, let's wrap this podcast up here. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Kolton and Blaise, thank you for the lesson, of course. And then let me stop the recording.